Yo, RMJ. Welcome back to the lab. Ready to pick up right where we left off with this TJF analysis? We've got our roadmap right here on the board. Since you mentioned wanting to go through this step by step from the top, we'll dive straight into that first section, the gross profit margin. Sound like a plan? All right, let's get into it. First up is the gross profit margin. This tells us how much profit is left after we cover the direct cost of the goods sold. Here is the formula from your notes. For 20 by 5, we grab the gross profit of 1,540 and the revenue of 20,510 right from that profit or loss table in your materials. When you crunch those numbers, you get 7.5%. Now, looking back at 20 by 4, the notes say it was 5.6%. Since 7.5 is higher, the margin definitely improved. Before we look at why that happened, does that calculation make sense to you? I see what you're thinking. In this specific problem for TJF, we're strictly using the numbers provided in those financial statement extracts. The notes don't break out separate subsidiary figures for us to calculate. We use the total revenue and total gross profit shown in the extracts from statement of profit or losses to get that overall margin. Does that clear up which numbers we're grabbing? Perfect. Now, your notes point out two big reasons for this jump, from 5.6% to 7.5%. First, online food delivery shot up by 25%. Since those delivery charges add extra profit without adding much to the cost of the goods, the margin goes up. Second, more people are buying clothes. 40% of customers this year compared to only 20% last year. Since clothes usually have a better markup than groceries, that's a massive win for the bottom line. Does it make sense how selling different types of items can change that percentage? Moving down to the next section, the operating profit margin. This one looks at what's left after we pay not just for the goods, but also for all the running costs like rent, wages, and marketing. Here's our formula. We take the operating profit of 650, which you'll find right under gross profit in your table, and divide it by that same revenue of 20,510. That gives us 3.2%. Last year, it was 3%. So it improved, but barely. Notice anything weird? The gross margin jumped up a lot, but this one only budged a tiny bit. Why do you think the operating part of the business didn't see as big of a boost? It's because of all the extra spending TJF did to grow. If you look at the events in your notes, they ran a strong marketing campaign and opened 10% more stores. All that advertising and the costs of getting new stores up and running are operating expenses. So, even though they made more on each item sold, they spent a huge chunk of that extra cash on these one-off growth costs. Ready to see how this affects the return on capital employed, or FOCI? Next up is FOCI. This is the big one for investors because it shows how much profit the company is generating from all the money put into the business. In your notes, they use operating profit, also called profit before interest and tax, divided by the total long-term funds. To get the bottom number, we add the equity of $5,050 and the non-current liabilities of $3,250. You'll find both of those in the Statement of Financial Position table. When we do the math, we get 7.8%. Last year, it was 7.1%, so it's a small bump. The reason it didn't jump higher is that those new borrowings used to open the stores increased our liabilities quite a bit. Just to check, do you see where I grabbed that $5,050 and $3,250 from in your financial position table? Take a look at the second table in your notes, the extracts from Statement of Financial Position. If you look at the 20 by 5 column, you'll see a row for equity with $5,050 and a row for non-current liabilities with $3,250. We add those two together because they represent the total long-term money employed in the business. Does that help you spot them in your source materials? All right, let's switch gears to liquidity. This is all about whether TJF has enough cash and stuff that can be turned into cash to pay its short-term bills. Here is the formula for the current ratio. We pull 1,570 for current assets and 2,920 for current liabilities from your statement of financial position. That gives us 0.54. Since 0.54 is lower than 0.61, the ratio has deteriorated. Usually, a ratio below 1.0 looks scary, but your notes mention a special reason why this is actually normal for supermarkets. Want to guess why a place like TJF doesn't need as much cash sitting around as a normal business? Exactly. Think about it. When you go to TJF, you pay right then and there. They don't have to wait for you to pay them back on credit, so they don't have much money tied up in receivables. Plus, since food goes bad, they have to sell it fast, keeping inventory low. On the flip side, they're so big they can tell their suppliers, hey, we'll pay you in a month or two. That keeps their current liabilities high and their current assets low. Makes sense why it's below 1, right? Next, let's look at how fast TJF is moving its stock. This formula tells us how many days, on average, items sit on the shelf before being sold. We take the inventory of 850 and divide it by the cost of sales, which is 18,970.
Yes.